Hey, okay. Very good evening, guys. This is Paul NO0T and the Front Range 6-meter group. And tonight we have Francis KV5W, who's going to be giving us a good talk on how to use a lot of the tools to get your FFMA award. A lot of things out there that I didn't realize until I started messing around. And Francis is right now, he's the administrator, I believe, of a lot of the information that that's collected on FFMA. So with that, I'm going to throw the microphone over to Francis. Hello, Victor 5W. Go ahead, Francis.
All right, good evening, everybody. Just to preface this meeting presentation a bit, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of magical things come out of this meeting. A lot of you guys already know some of the stuff. I do have a few tips, though, that may help. And the primary focus will be on the leaderboard and how to utilize it as a tool and get involved with it. The presentation doesn't have a lot of slides with words. It's mainly going to be a demonstration. I'm actually going to go through the steps of setting certain things up. If anybody needs me to slow down, because I'm going to blow through a lot of things, but I will follow up on the Front Range 6-meter group with a post with all the links and all the information that I talk about here. So we can go a little bit more in depth there. I just crammed a whole bunch of stuff into a meeting. I haven't rehearsed it, so I don't know how long it's going to last, but I don't want to tie up everybody's evening with it either. So with that, I guess we can get started. Oh, and by the way, this is the first Zoom presentation I've given, so it's going to be full of probably some technical issues as well. Let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen. Are y'all seeing the splash page there?
Yes.
Okay. Now let me get my... All right, so not really going to go over the details about what FFMA is. All that's covered very well on the ARRL page. Also, some of the other resources that I talk about later, you can get more information there. But all this is about all of us trying to replicate what Fred Fish W5FF did, and that was working all 488 grids in the contiguous United States. As of now, what we have, there was 12 up to this year, and then now we're at 23 awardees. And a lot of that's because of the tools that we have out there, and that's making people become more active and get more involved. So it's been pretty good. Some of the things that we have going on with the FFMA group and the Front Range 6-meter group and Slack, and we're going to talk about those things in a little bit more detail, some things that you could set up to help weed through all the noise that each one of those sites generates, and hopefully catch you a few grids along the way. Oh, let me go back to this map here. I think this is the ICOM map. When I first started out collecting grids about 6 years ago, this is what I was using, and I quickly stopped because I found an Excel version and started using it. But I always like when somebody shows their map, you know, where they've colored it in and you see the different ink that they've used over time. And so if any of y'all have an actual paper map that you're using, please share that with me. I kind of want to collect that a little bit, you know, from other people, because it's like Rick, he's on this call, W5EME. He has a paper map that he maintains, and it's pretty neat to see that. I wish I had kept mine and just kept going, even though I went the digital route. So the first thing with FFMA is to be informed. when I first started out, I did find the FFMA group on when it was part of Yahoo Groups, but I didn't really subscribe to the email notifications and stuff, so I would check it from time to time, and I just never really, I thought there was no activity going on there, so I just would just monitor the band and work who I could work, and I really had no intention on really pursuing FFMA. I was only interested in VUCC, but then once I got to my first 100 grids or so, I went and decided, well, let me try for 200. And then at that point, once I hit 200 the next year, it was on then, and I started paying attention to the FFMA group, and still not a whole lot of information there. So where I found out that how things were happening was on social media, and that was mainly on Facebook at the time, the Facebook groups and the rover groups on Facebook. You would see when they would rove during contests, and I would see which grids I need. So, and I would try to work them during contest. And then a few years later, WSJT came out, and so Facebook was a great resource for that then. Now, I will say this now, a lot of the WSJT Facebook groups now, in my opinion, they're not the best groups out there. You can get a little bit of information, but it's just full of arguments and bickering now. Just take what you can from it, learn from it, get your software set up. Follow the rover groups, though. The rover groups have good equipment set up and good ideas on how to do things. They always post where they're going to be and during a contest, and they're interested in making contacts with you. So when it comes to Facebook, for sure, follow the rover groups. The other thing you may want to take a look into is Twitter. A lot of you may not be on Twitter. When I was getting more involved in satellite, I noticed a lot of the satellite ops were on Twitter. So I joined up and started following the guys. And those guys, even though a lot of them don't do 6 meters, some of them will start doing 6 meters, like Dave and Wyatt. There's top-notch 6 meter rovers now. And there's going to be a few more that are going to seed out of the satellite groups. Those guys go out to rare grids. They're all about helping one another, kind of like the FFMA community is. It's just there's a lot more rovers out there activating grids. The next thing is FFMA Groups IO. I talked about that briefly earlier. I see when new people join up, sometimes they'll ask about, are there any activations going on? Is anybody going to be here or there? Use the search function, look through the files, see what's been going on. There's a lot of history in the Groups IO. There's even some operating tips there, but just do a real quick search, see if there's anything going on. And it says, so here's everything that with CM93. Use the search function on these group pages. Also take a look at, like I said, previous, if I can find it, the files section. There's a lot of information about Fred Fish. There's a lot of history here from when this was a Yahoo group and then moved to Groups IO. All that history is still here. The original Fred Fish PowerPoint presentation that was given years back is here. Let me see what else we got. If any of these will open, I think it's downloading everything instead of opening them. Here's a 2007 grid survey report. There's a lot more statistical analysis going on with FFMA back during the beginning to show that whether or not it correlates with what the ARRL was getting for confirmations. This is taking a while to load, so let's see if it will load. Okay, for some reason it's not going to load. But take a look through these files and get an idea of the history and what's been going on. and make sure you search the messages. The FFMA Group IO, the main thing you're going to see there is discussion about activation. There's not a whole lot of technical. Every now and then somebody will bring up a technical topic, and everyone will give pointers about how to do things or modifications they've made. And but really, as of lately, what I've been experienced with is the most technical stuff has been coming out of the front range 6 meter group and the videos on YouTube, setting up the SDR receivers, which I've done now. I've seen a huge improvement with my station running that way. I'm still not 100% sold, but I am running them. I'm running SDRs and just stock radio at the same time and doing comparisons. And so all that information is coming out of the front range 6 meter group, which we'll post this video after we're done. And so tune in, set up your email notifications. I usually get the daily digest for both the group IOs, and I read through them every morning. The next one that you want to get involved with is Slack, VHF Slack. If you're not on VHF Slack, you're not going to collect grids very fast. This is where all the activity is. Anything that's posted in these FFMA groups, IO or front range 6 meter, ultimately is going to end up on Slack on live chat. Join Slack. A little bit later on, we're going to talk about the app a little bit and setting up your preferences so you can get your notifications. And Slack can be hard to follow at times, and if you don't set up your mentions and your keywords properly, then you can just get lost, and there's a good chance you'll just do away with it. When I first joined it, there wasn't as many people on there. Now there's a lot of chatter, a lot of noise, and it's real easy to get lost, and you don't know who's in what grid. If you set up your mentions and keywords, you'll know where they're at. Any questions on this so far? All right, moving on along. Now let's talk about the leaderboard. So the leaderboard's maintained in the FFMA group IO. Bill passed it on to me at the end of last year after he completed FFMA himself. I've kept most things the same, just kind of reformatted it and added a few things to it to help the rovers. We got to provide as much information to the rovers so they know where to go and when to go and who to try to contact, who to work. And so I've tried to do my best at putting that information out there. Updates are much faster with the automation of collecting the data, and eventually this will grow into something else, but right now it's doing pretty good. And so we'll talk about, I'll kind of go over the leaderboard a little bit. I did make a recent modification to it on this last update that some of you may not have seen. It mainly pertains to rovers, but we'll go over those things briefly. Let's get this loaded. This is the leaderboard. Most of you have seen it. Let me minimize this. Okay. Up to this year, there's only 12 recipients. We're now at 23 with one pending. Jay completed recently. He was able to get a confirmation EMO6 and has submitted his application. But so far, the last I checked on the ARRL page, it didn't show up.
Hey, Francis.
Go ahead.
If you're trying to show us something, all we're seeing is your PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, we're not seeing your web browser or whatever else you might be using.
Yeah.
Oh.
Francis, there's there's two options on show. One is to view a specific window. The other is to show us your entire desktop. And if
Yeah.
you just show us a specific window, then you have to switch back and forth each time you want to go somewhere else.
I got it. I was doing a window, and now I'm doing a screen. So thanks for that. You should be seeing the screen now.
Right.
Yeah, that looks great. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So again, we're now at 23 official ARRL validated awardees.
Francis, I want to make one comment about
Yeah.
the lady who is in charge of the awards at ARRL has all the information out to the people who are updating the website, and it's the delay is at the end of the people who are tasked with updating their website. It's so that's where things get slow.
I emailed Bart a while back to get an update of the current leaderboard. So since the name doesn't change anymore, it should always stay updated. But I never got a response back from him. But anyway, I know they're working on it. I know things are different because of COVID. But I've gotten quite a few emails of people telling me that the data is not up to date. And, there's nothing I can really do about that. I know it's going to come through eventually. I remember last year, I think the last few guys that received the FFMA award, it wasn't posted till December on the website. So it was slow last year. It'll probably be just as slow this year. Excuse me. Let me see. Yeah, it stops KO9A right now. So a week or so ago, I don't recall this being here, and I just happened to look at it the other day and saw this. The previous leaderboard updates, I didn't put any numbers because I wasn't really sure how it was gonna, if someone was number 23 or 18, I wasn't really sure, but now I have this information. Let's go back to the leaderboard. So right now the leaderboard's sorted from confirmed grids. The stations in yellow, their data is either old or they don't quite have 400 grids yet. So their data is not used for the most needed grid calculation. We are at, I just had the numbers just a moment ago, 136 stations. I think when I took over the board, we may have been at maybe 80 or 90 stations. So we're collecting data from 136 stations, and 105 of those stations are have 400 or more grids confirmed. And there's a lot of guys who have more than 400 grids confirmed that just aren't interested in submitting data. If you run into those guys, convince them some way to submit their data. It's going to help the rovers out. It's also going to help represent the regions. There's been a lot of discussion about it's a regional needs are different, and that's not really necessarily, it's true, but the most needed grids are always going to be the most needed grids no matter where you're at in the United States. They may shift around a little bit, but not a whole lot. DMO2 is down on the list. It's going to be back up number 1 in a year or two. It's going to be up there. No doubt about it. It'll always be a rare grid. This is the most needed grid map. There's several of them here, just different color schemes. I did that for folks that may be colorblind, but these top ones are I can't remember the exact term, but they're supposed to be easier to see for colorblind folks. But I've heard different from people. They seem to have a harder time seeing these top 3 maps. So I replicated the original FFMA color scheme that Bill was using, and I maintained that one at the bottom.
Just to comment on that, Francis, that is the only map I can see out of all of your maps. That's the only one that gives me any information, because all of the rest of them blend into each other and my eyes can't pick them out.
People I've talked to, this one is the one they use. The rest of them, as Paul says, the text just is lost in the dark colors.
Yeah, I can see that. That was my biggest issue with doing it that way. But in a way, I also saw it as, if it's harder to read the text, it's not a needed grid. It's not as important. But what I'm probably going to do on another update is tweak that. I'm going to keep this color scheme just for, since it's kind of the legacy color scheme, but I'm going to tweak the color scheme a little bit, because this pink and this red don't really jive with the way the color scheme should go. They really should be flipped the other way, and then it would make more sense to me. So I'll make a different map. There was one produced, I think, by someone with the ARRL, maybe back in 2009 or so. That's more of a red to green color scheme that works really well. I think I've seen Dave post the map. It's in the Group IO archive. And I'll probably replicate that one. It's a little bit easier to see. Now,
We'll send you an email if we feel like we want this one or not that one. Anybody who wants to do that, let Francis know.
So, okay, all this is calculated off grid data. The grid data comes from all the users that submit their data. There's 136 stations that submit their data. I have 138 sheets. There's 2 stations that requested sheets that haven't filled their data out yet. And so we'll get that on here one day. I'm hoping after this meeting, maybe I get a few more requests, and I'll talk about how to request that sheet and when I can get it out to you. The updates for the leaderboard is going to start slowing down as the season winds down. There wasn't very much change from last week to this week, and I expect to see the same for next week. And then I'm probably going to move to just doing a monthly update, and it won't be announced or anything, just like I did for the majority of this year. I'm not going to announce that it's updated. It's just going to get updated. Every time you go to it, it's going to be the most current version of the sheet. So the most needed grid is calculated off of people's whose data indicate that they have confirmed or worked. Let me make sure that formula is right. Worked. I do this so many different ways. Let me look at the formula real quick to see what I'm doing. GG11. No, confirmed. So those who have worked, it is worked 400 or more grids. And then their data has to be less than 2 years old. There have been quite a few people drop off the leaderboard because of lack of update. There's a few people that I leave on here even though they haven't updated their data. I don't get a response. They may return. It doesn't really affect the outcome much. And there are some people that have requested to be removed simply because of the digital modes. So they've dropped off. And then, of course, we've had 11, 12 recipients this year, so their data has dropped off as well. All that data is archived. Anybody who wants to see any of the old leaderboards, I archive every time I make an update, the previous sheet is archived. So all those sheets are still available out there for anybody to see on request. Any questions on the leaderboard? Let me get back to that.
I do have one quick question, Francis.
Yeah.
Every so often, I get an email saying that a guest has updated the spreadsheet.
Yeah, so part of that comes from, for instance, the leader maps and neater maps, those two tabs down here. Those users can go in and make a change. So that actually counts as an update. That's the only thing that's really being updated. I don't know what y'all see when I push a new sheet out. I don't know if y'all get a notification or not. But I see anytime any of you guys go into your personal sheets, and I also see anytime somebody makes changes to these two pages here. The main one is usually the neater maps, and it'll show me. I don't see anybody else in the sheet right now, but it also will show me that somebody's here, and it'll show me who they are. But since the link is shared and some people aren't signed up for OneDrive, they only come up as a guest. Most of the guys, I can actually see who it is that's accessing the sheet and making changes. There's been a few times I went on Monday mornings when I go to update the sheet, there's 2 or 3 people in it, and I can't make the update until they get out of it, or until I guess OneDrive decides they're inactive long enough and drops them out. Luckily, in most of the cases, I knew exactly who it was because their name was there, and I was able to figure out what their call was, and I would send them a message on Slack asking them to get out of the sheet so I could push an update out. And then I do tend to go into y'all's personal sheets from time to time, and I'll make changes too. If you guys for a while there didn't have a date entered, and so my data won't calculate without a date, and so I'll go in and do that. Or they may have had the full state typed out, Oklahoma, every letter instead of the abbreviation, and I have to, instead of me manually correcting that every time I generate the leaderboard, I'll go into the personal sheet and correct it there, so when I do my data import, I'm not having to change anything after that.
Francis, can you go back to the neater map a moment?
Yep.
This, where you are at the moment with the list of names, etc., and how far they are away. Yeah, from a rover's point of view, that is an absolutely wonderful addition. Thank you.
Yeah.
Francis, do you have a way to show us how we might use these? Is that in your plan for this meeting?
Yep. Let me look. Yep, it's actually on this slide here. Not on the slide. We're at that point in the presentation now. Let me go back to leader maps real quick just to talk about it. Right now on leader maps, it's just displaying everything that you have entered on your personal sheet. Now, some of you guys have the new personal sheet, which we'll go over here in a moment, that has this map that also allows you to include the call signs of the stations you've worked. That data doesn't have to be entered, and I'm slowly going to be updating everybody's sheet to that. There's probably about maybe 8 or 9 stations that have the new sheet, and we'll go over that a little bit. But the reason for having this isn't really necessary to have here, but it was getting kind of tough to look at the leaderboard, and I see that Lefty needs 1 grid, and I didn't know what grid he needed. So then I can go to the leader map and put his call in and see what grid he needed. Well, now I've added on this most recent update, everyone who has 480 or more, I've added the list of grids by rarity off to the side so that everybody can see it on the leaderboard itself. And one thing, if you kind of glance through here, you'll see that, you know, EL84 and EL58 and EL15 and DMO2, all of them, DN78, just show up over and over and over. So these guys, they're atop the leaderboard. They're lucky in the fact that the grid they need also happens to be some of the rarest grids as well. You know, I wouldn't want to, like Jay recently, the grid that he needed to finish up wasn't a rare grid. You know, EM06 is not that rare. You don't really want to be stuck with that because you're not going to get a rover to go out there. And if for some reason you just can't make the propagation path to EM06, you're just stuck. So I added this. So now there's not as much need for the leader maps, but I'm going to maintain that there so that everyone just gets a feel of where they're located at versus what grids they need, and they can compare everybody else's data to their own. Now back to the neater maps. This was put in place for the rovers. I reached out to several of them on Slack. We got in kind of a group chat, and I asked what they needed, what would make it better for them, and this was the outcome of that. It could be fancier, but you know, with the limitations of Excel, this is about as good as I can do for now. So what we have here is the station. If there's an asterisk by their name, they have 400 or more grids confirmed. So technically they classify as a leader. Their grid squares there, and the distance from the needed grid is listed here. So we've set for 430. I can't remember what the meteor scatter range I'm using, but we set a meteor scatter, the typical meteor scatter range. And so if they're out of meteor scatter range, they're grayed. So the data is still there, but it's grayed out. So these stations will have a much harder time. They really need to wait for sporadic E or some other event to be able to work DN78. This also lets the rover know, okay, 70% of these leaders need DN78. Well, 70% makes for a good meteor scatter grid. So you can go any time of the year to DN78. You're going to work a good group of people. Whereas DMO2, not a very good meteor scatter grid. Doesn't mean don't go there and work meteor scatter. Doesn't mean wait till the summer to go there. But ideally, if you want to work as most stations as possible, you need a sporadic E event. So let's wait till summer to go if you're planning a trip and spending your money. Another thing that can be done too is you can enter a 6-digit grid. So like earlier I had DL88 AX in there, and it'll calculate that out. So it'll calculate out the distance and give you a good, 69%. There's 52 stations that need the grid. And now if I go back, I don't know if it'll change much if I just go to DL88, which would be the center of the grid, which is, I believe it's MM, DL88 MM would be the center. And it's 72%. So if a rover knows exactly where they're going and they want to get a little bit more detailed on the stations that they most likely could work, they would enter a 6-digit grid up there. Now, something that I've added on this update here are 2 comma separated lists. A list of just the leaders and a list of all the stations that need DL88. The reason for that is later I'm going to talk about utilizing JT Alert wanted call sign settings, and with that you could put a comma separated list, maintain a comma separated list to upload to wanted call signs, and that way if you're running JT Alert while you're roving, the stations that need will be highlighted. You'll get an audio alert, however you do your alert settings in JT Alert. I know it's an additional piece of software, to be running while roving. But when I was in Big Bend, I did this, and that kept me from not working stations that needed a grid. It also, one funny thing that came out of it, it also let me know stations that apparently had no clue I was down in DM 70, because I would see them working stations left and right, and they would pop up as a wanted call sign for me. And I would wait and wait for them to call me, and they never did. And so I would just call them. So there was a few stations that got DM 70 or DL 89, one of them, because I called them knowing that they needed the grid. They had no clue I was there somehow.
Francis, when I was in EL 28, I used this list for EL 28 and went through and got emails off of QRZ for each of the people on the list and sent an email to each of the people on this list that needed EL 28 saying when I was going to be there.
Yeah, see, and I had intended to do the same thing when I was going to Big Bend, but I was down to the wire of going.
Well,
'Cause when
and I only had 38 or something like that I had to do. If you had a really
Yeah.
big list, it'd be harder, but it's one of the ways to use this.
Yeah. And later on, we might even be able to. Some people are so scared. I have a few people that try to delete their email from the personal sheet every time. I have it locked now because if I lose their email, I can't get a hold of them if I'm trying to get some information from them.
Yeah.
Some people don't like their email address being out there. And but if we can get some kind of commitment from everybody, then maybe I could share email list whenever a rover goes out, for these stations. That would make it a little bit easier.
Yeah,
That'd be up to the individual, though.
yeah, and it would have to be something that you could maintain that's a switch. And that gets to be, something that says, yes, it's okay to use my email address for.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I would assume anyone who is interested in FFMA is a member of the ARRL. So, we all get an ARRL.net account, and, you can go on there and just forward it to your own personal account. So, if you were to have that, if you were to let people know that, it's not like they're actually getting their email.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, any questions on this sheet or any comments?
I want to make one comment is because you own this, you already go into editing mode, but scroll back up to the top where it has the number. You see in the middle at the top, it shows editing with the pencil.
Mm-hmm.
That comes up as viewing for us. So if you guys bring it up, you have to click on editing, and then you can type a grid in where the orange or whatever, salmon color, whatever that is. If you're just in viewing mode, you can't type and select a specific grid.
Yes, that brings up another good point. When I first made this sheet or this workbook, it was a macro-enabled workbook, and the only way to use it was if you could enable macros. So that meant you also had to have Excel and was okay with enabling that. It took me a little while to figure out how to make it function the way it does now online. There's other other platforms we could use, and I am working to move toward just a web app. I might show you guys that in this presentation. I might not. It's got a long ways to go, but there is some good work that's been done there. It definitely makes entering your data a lot easier, and then it'll also facilitate email notifications and all that from rovers whenever it's done. So As
Just-
I get
It
closer.
was just something where I had to send you an email to say what's going on here. And so if anybody has tried this and you can't get it to accept a grid or a call on the other one, that's what you have to do.
And if you actually download the file to open in your own Excel, you'll need the current version of Excel because there's a function in here for sort that doesn't exist. I think it's in Excel 2019 is when they first put it out. So I think Rick and Paul ran into that. It wouldn't sort properly for them when they downloaded the file.
Yeah, I just commented. I've been able to do everything I needed to do with the shared version. And then it's there and it's up to you to keep the copy of it, not me.
Yeah. There's another tab here, grid trends. I've taken the data since it was handed over. Just if anyone wants to look at how CM79 has trended, it's really hard to put too much weight on it because the number of users has changed over time, so you're not really getting a good comparison. But I mean, we were at 41% when Bill last produced the sheet for CM79. We got down to 27% here, and then it started creeping back up, and we're back up to 33%. I did add these on a recent update, so you can see the percent change from the start, from Bill's initial data, and then how much change in a month and how much change in the last week. There's some pretty neat information here. But like I said, the number of users changed. That's what some of these upticks are. When you look at these little graphs, there may have been a few users that were added down in Florida that just happened to all need CM96. All right, so now let's talk about how you get your data on the leaderboard. So you can send me an email or a message on Slack, and I'll send you a link, and that link will be also, if you use your phone to scan this QR code, that link will be a form just asking you a few questions, and all this is the data that goes in the header of the sheet when I generate it. One thing that I do add, that I did add recently, is how many FFMA grids have you worked or confirmed, because I've had a few guys that get on the leaderboard when the sheet's sent, everything's set to confirm, and so they have to go in and put all this stuff as not worked, and it takes a lot of work no matter which direction you're going. So at least this will let me know, do I send them a completely not worked sheet or a completely worked sheet? So submit this form to me in a couple of days. I'll get a form generated to you. You'll get an email directly from me with a link to your sheet. Save that link. That's the only thing you have to save. And when you update your sheet, let me go to one of the sheets. This will be the sheet that you get. There's an instruction tab. This is the new sheet. There's an instruction tab. Read these instructions. One of the main thing that needs to be followed is this field, this point right here about the date. There's so many folks, including myself, that forget to revise this date. Revise the date on your initial workup. If you're new, don't fill it in, leave it blank. That'll tell me when I pull the data, if it's blank, I'm not going to include your data in the leaderboard. As soon as you put a date in there, then that lets me know you've went through all your grids and have them marked as you see they need to be marked, and then I'll start including your data. And then just try, just every now and then, even if you're not doing an update, if you're just looking at your map or checking your grids, just pop a new date in there. Keep that data fresh, because there's a few people that have updated quite often and have never changed the date, and come November they'll get an email from me because they're about to drop off the leaderboard because their date is 2 years would have elapsed since their last update, even though I know they've actually updated their sheet. Well, it looks like they've updated their sheet at least.
Hey, here's
So
a comment. Here's a shortcut that works at least on the desktop version. To enter a date, hit Control semicolon, and it'll put in the current date and press enter. You're done.
I never knew that. So that's good. I learned something with Excel. One thing I do not want you to do is put equals today. Don't put that. Yeah, it'll give today's date, but I do not need it. If you drop off the face of the earth, your data is going to look like it's always updated, and you'll stay on the leaderboard, and people will be trying to give you a needed grid, and you don't exist anymore. So I don't know, what was that shortcut again that you just gave?
Yeah, hi, this is Barry, K7BWH. Control semicolon.
Okay.
Try it here, see how that works. Control semicolon.
And that doesn't do the same. Let me see. That doesn't enter anything. Oh, I like that. Okay. I just entered it on my other screen. I see how it works. Yeah, control semicolon. That'll work. Just don't do the equals today formula, because that'll mess things up. I've had a few guys do that, and I went in and wiped it out and put a date in there. So go through, use the example on the instruction page, fill out all your data. Leave this blank until everything's good to go. Now this isn't my actual sheet, but I'm just showing an example of some of the new features that I've added to it. Is if you fill out the data in column C for station worked or confirmed, and you put whether or not you have them on Logbook of the World or not, it'll include that information on your map. So if they're not in Logbook of the World, it's a QSL card on the map, it'll show an asterisk before the call sign. So let me see, let me bring up my actual report. Now, anybody who wants to do this in the off season and get their sheet updated, I can help you fill this information in with data from Logbook of the World, but you'll need to go in and manually copy it and then send it to me, and then I'll paste it in. If you don't have Excel, I'll paste that data in, and then it'll get your map populated with the call signs. One good thing about populating the map with the call signs is every now and then someone's going to say, who'd you work in EM 87, and then so I have to go digging through my log to look, and the satellite guys have been doing stuff like this for a while. So I just tried to replicate what they're doing. It just makes sense so that we can share data with one another. And so you don't have to do it. If you don't put a grid, if you don't put a call in there, it'll just be blank. So you don't have to populate. I forgot what grid that was I pulled. Was it 97? 86. No, it didn't update. So I don't know why it's not updating. It's because it's a OneDrive sheet. That's the reason why. But anyway, it'll stay blank if you don't put the data in. So it's up to you guys if you want to do this. Now, one thing I want to talk about doing with your data and why I encourage everybody to fill out their data on one of these sheets is on this map up top. It shows all my needed grids in a comma separated list. The keyword section of Slack accepts a comma separated list. So I will copy this and paste it in Slack, and anytime anybody mentions any of these grids, I'll get a notification. So that also cuts down when there's a bunch of rovers active and everyone's posting and spotting in Slack. It cuts down on the noise, and I see only the grids I need to see. And I'll show you guys that real quick. Let me go to Slack. I don't know if you guys know how to do this, but you would go to your preferences. And on your notifications, which I have one thing, I don't know what all I have turned on, but anyhow, direct messages, mentions, and keywords, and you'll paste your comma separated list right here. And this is what I'm using right now. If I go, see, Francis is in my comma separated list, and then there's Dave there, is highlighted. I generally don't use the web page. What I use is the app. So on the app, one thing you can do, and I don't know, you may be able to do this on the web page as well, is on the mentions and reactions, you can have it off to the side. So anytime anybody mentions any of my keywords, I can just see it off to the side. It won't necessarily be in the chat itself. So I can click on this and it'll bring it up. And this is where John was mentioning DN63 and DN78, and then I can follow through from there. It keeps me from digging through all these messages to try to find out if somebody's in a grid I need or going to a grid I need. So I'll always keep this pinned over here to the side. You can close it out. But if you want to have it always pinned to the side, you just you can turn it on here, and then I can move it to the main page, or I can move to main page, or I can pin it off here. So it always will stay here, and I can peruse anytime anybody's talked about anything I was interested in. Any questions on that? All right. So now, next we're going to talk about another tool to help you find the grids you need besides using keywords. I'm going to let Paul talk about Grid Tracker a little bit.
Just had to find the unmute button. All right. Thank you very much, Francis. And I'm just going to share my current screen here. Let me see if I can find the right one. This will stop you from sharing temporarily. Here we go. Let me see if I can find what I'm looking for. Yeah, I think it's this one. There you go. So now you can kind of see the, this is what my current grid tracker is. So what this shows is just basically all the grids I've worked, kind of like everywhere in the world, and the countries I got over in Europe. You can see those grids are marked as well. But this is the main grids, the grid square thing. You can see all the yellow spots. Those are people I've worked, but I haven't got QSL or haven't got an LOTW for it. I just got them worked, but I got to confirm them now somehow. So I'll probably be sending out a bunch of cards. And at the top of the screen, see if I can pull it down. It'll say who I've worked, like 564 grids, and confirmed 526. So that's not too bad. It also shows me who I just worked, and I'm just gonna take that off there. The other beautiful thing about this tool is that it's connected directly into JTDX. So when I work somebody, it'll pop up on my screen that I've worked them. The other beautiful thing I like about this is you can just basically click on any grid, and it'll show you exactly who you worked and who you got confirmed on that particular grid. So this is kind of a neat tool, I think, for myself anyway. It shows you what mode you worked them in and everything else, and also what bands. Over on the right here, you can see a couple of things. Is how do I keep this thing updated? Well, I can do a couple of different things. I can go to my logging program, which is the ACL logging, or the N3FJP logging program. I can just simply export a EDIF file, and I can import them from here. If I click on EDIF, I guess you can't, there it is. This shows like what I've got in the grid tracker, and the last one I got from AC Log was on the 24th of August, and I just inputted that, and then it would record who I've worked if I clicked on it. Another nice thing about it is it also works with LOTW, so I could download the logbook of the world into a file and just import it directly into this, and it pops all the squares for me. So it's kind of nice. If I want to see what I've done on FFMA, under the this icon over here, which shows a trophy, it'll cycle through all the different awards I've got. So here's like I said, zones. If I go through them here, let's see, there's all the, I've worked all states. And moving along, let's see, there's all the counties, although I'm not sure. And this is FFMA. And here you go. You can see who I've worked and who I need right away, what grids. And so if somebody comes on, it will show up under the, let me see if I can move this over here. Just go over there. Yeah, there we go. This is my JT alert, and I have a box here which says FFMA grid alert. So as soon as somebody comes on that I need, it'll just pop up right over here. I just have to click on it, and I can work him if he's calling CQ. And again, each one of these things, if I just hover the cursor over it, it'll tell me, you know, what I've worked and what I've confirmed in that particular grid. And also tells me which grids I need. So here's one I need is the DM87, and it covers Colorado and Kansas, both states. I also see here these empty boxes down here, EL86, and another one EL84, which are kind of like up in the middle of the water, and of course EL58, which is a tough one to get because it's just a little piece of rock in the middle of the water. So anyway, that's kind of what I do with this. This covers the continental USA, which is kind of nice. And here I'm back to my original all the grids I worked. So it's kind of a cool tool to have. Any questions on this? I guess everybody knows what it is. So I just thought I'd cover it for the recording, so that anybody who doesn't know what it is can see it right away. I think it's going to stop sharing now. Back to you, Francis.
All right, let me see if I can figure out how to share again. There we go. All right, so I used Grid Tracker when it first came out, and I had an issue with getting it to reflect my log correctly. It was most likely an error within my log. I think I've tried 3 versions since then, and a lot more features have been added over time. But I pretty much stayed with JT Alert. I'll try Grid Tracker again, most likely soon. I'll probably download it and give it a try again. I just recently changed my logging. I was using Log4OM, now I'm using DX Keeper, and I have some discrepancies there. So there's some errors in my log that kept Grid Tracker from working, and I imagine that's the reason why it's also not calculating things correctly in DX Keeper. But I mainly use JT Alert, and I'm going to go over a few things with JT Alert real quick as soon as I figure out where my presentation is. So JT Alert, the previous version of JT Alert before this one that just came out, added this FFMA grid alert. It's a feature that you turn on, and this data is actually, even though it says it's from 6 meters, I pulled this from 40 meters last night, just didn't change the frequency on WSJTX. So even though this guy was active this year on 6 meters, unfortunately I never had the opportunity to fully work on. Got close a few times, but anyway, luckily he came up and gave me a FFMA grid alert to show for this presentation. The most recent version that came out, I don't know if any of you guys are on the JT Alert Group IO, but I was asking about email notifications. If there's a way we can get an FFMA email notification. Well, Laurie decided to, instead of he can't really redo the GUI because the layout's pretty much set. He did add an environment variable for the email alerts. Called, I believe is FFMA grid, and it'll always return a yes or a no. So if any of you guys are using the email alerts, I highly recommend using W9MDB's PowerShell scripts. He's real active in the JT Alert groups, well, a lot of the groups, any of the JT groups, period. And he does some really, really nice, clean PowerShell scripts. His QRZ page has a lot of utilities and scripts, links to scripts there that you guys can download. And so I recommend checking that out if you haven't done so already. After this, when I do a follow-up post on the Front Range group, I will send a link to his email script that I use. And also I'll add the modification that you have to make to the script to get only FFMA text and email alerts. Why this was, scratch that, not previous, but this was important to me because this year I've been 100% remote. I moved an hour and a half away from my station, and I can't put any antennas up where I'm at right now. So this year I've been 100% remote, so I rely on these text and email alerts because I'm out and about. I'm taking care of my parents and the rest of my family, and I'm a real busy person. Well, when DX on 6 meters flows in, I get email alert after email alert after email alert, and so I needed a way to shut that off, and because I was only interested in FFMA grids. And so I'll show you guys a script, PowerShell script, and help you guys set it up if you don't have it, and to send FFMA grid alerts. But if you want to open it up to, there's no way with the environment variable to bypass it. So if you do want the DX grid alerts, then you'll have to change the script out. And let me pull up JT Alert real quick and show you guys that, which means I gotta launch WSJT first. Give me one moment, guys. I didn't have this prepared. JT Alert.
While you're doing that, can I make a couple comments?
Go ahead.
Okay. You're mentioning obviously the JT Alert about the emails. Many people are not aware that your cell phone has an email. So in my case, JT Alert not only sends me an email, the problem with the email is that you're not always around and, you know, to see an email, but with a phone, it's a different thing. So it'll send you a text or a notification, whatever you may call it. And you can find out your carrier's email address. Typically, it's your phone number at something. And, you know, you can just go to the carrier's website and it'll tell you what it is. And also just one quick thing that I always tell people, and sometimes they argue with me, Laurie is a lady.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Who else didn't know that?
Well, didn't know who Laurie was.
His picture, Laura's picture looks strangely like a guy, but whatever.
Oh, I haven't seen a picture.
I will caution anybody thinking of setting up email to text alerts, though. Most of the major cell phone providers in the US have a rate limit or a throttle on the number of email to text you can send. And if you have alerts set up to send you every little thing, you will quickly get blacklisted. Don't ask me how I know that.
Let's see. All right, let me see if I can show you guys. All right, I got a lot going on my screen. I'll just go ahead and share this screen. All right, are you guys seeing my JT alert? Let me minimize. Right here. Oh, I didn't hit the button.
All I see is just there it is. I got it.
Let me get some things straightened out. Okay, so what you want to go do, just to show you real quick, if I can get settings to work, there you go. Let me get this. Miscellaneous alerts, user defined alert. So what I do in order to switch between normal JT alerts for my text messages and emails and FFMA only, all I did was just make a new, copy the script, put the new if statements that you need to be able to look to make sure you're on 6 meters and to look to make sure it's a FFMA grid that's being reported. And all I did was just put a 1 by the file name, and that would be my new, this is my script that I run for FFMA alerts. And all it is it's just a matter of setting up the if statements to make sure that you are on 6 meters and to make sure you are that it is a FFMA grid. Now it'll still pass it'll still pass all these other alerts that you have turned on. It'll only pass wanted grid if it is a FFMA grid. Now someone brought up that the cell carriers having email addresses. Basically, I want to say I might have I have a DX Keeper has a good, not DX Keeper, Spot Collector for DX Lab Suite has a good document that'll show you all the carrier email addresses so that you could use your cell phone. I use both my email and my cell phone in the script that I use. And let me see what else I can show y'all while I'm here. I briefly mentioned earlier the wanted call sign list. So let me share a different screen real quick. Go back to new share, screen 1. just gotta get everything out of the way. Okay, so what you do, I recommend this for rovers. You don't have to do it, but I highly recommend it. So just go in and copy the, anytime you're copying any of these comma separated lists that I provide, you just click on the first cell or the first call or first grid, depending on which one you're copying is, and just copy that. Control C or right click copy. And then in JT Alert, miscellaneous alerts, Walden call sign, and hold on, you gotta do a few more things. So I'm gonna open up Notepad. I'm gonna paste those into the Notepad. This was CM79. I'll save that file as CM79. If I'm going to do a bunch of grids, I would do it for each grid. I'll save it in documents. And then here, I will import. Let me get my stuff here. Documents. Oh, I got things messed up. Well, I thought I saved it.
You saved it as a text file, and that's trying to show you a list of CSV.
And then just put all those calls in there. So now anytime those calls, so I would change that each time when I go to a new grid. And then the alert on JT Alert will come up this bright pink or whatever color I set it to, and I can also set a sound alert. I don't use any of the sound alerts unless I happen to be around the radio and just working on some other project. I just mainly use the visual alerts and the email alerts.
Francis, one comment.
Go ahead.
Notice that there is no export. So if you have a basic set of call signs that you want to alert on, like all the guys in your part of the city or whatever, you need to create a list that has that. You can do an import replace, get rid of everything but the one file you're importing. But like I say, there is no, once you've built this list, there is no way to export it.
And it's not hidden in the application files either. You can't really access it anywhere else to modify it. So all the work for the wanted call sign list has to happen on this screen.
Yeah, so the point really is if you want to go back to some previous list, the only way you can do that is to have a file that has your list that you build it from.
Right.
But I did use that for EL 28, and it worked out very well to have. As soon as if there were 2 or 3 people calling, I could see the ones that were actually on the FFMA leaderboard and needed the grid. And they'd be highlighted.
Yeah, it's good to have, especially when a lot of the folks out there, like when I went to Big Bend, even before I posted anything about donations or anything like that, people started sending me. So I feel like I don't want to miss those guys. They're helping me out, helping me with it. I can't necessarily put priority on them, but I sure as hell can make it easier for me to miss them. And so that's what I did. I created one of those forms like I showed you guys for signing up for the leaderboard. I created one of those forms and sent it out for people who aren't on the leaderboard to let me know they needed it. And I ended up with a pretty big list of stations. And like I said earlier, though, some of them, it's like they forgot I was going or they're not using grid alerts, and so they didn't realize I was in DM70 or DL79, and so I worked them anyway when I wasn't seeing any stations that were on the list calling me, and I could see them working other stations. I would just work them. All right, let me pull my presentation back up, see where I'm at. I haven't even paid attention to how long we've been going on, so I don't want to drag this out too long. Let me see how much time has elapsed. Oh, we're an hour and a half in. All right, so I'm just briefly going to go over these DX maps. Sign up for the email alerts, the propagation email alerts. Go to DX maps, sign up for it. That's why Paul and I knew that Rick was working Aurora the other day, because we got the email alert from DX maps. To that note, Spot. DX maps, a lot of the propagation reports and stuff, not reports, but the notifications that go out is based on spots. If nobody's spotting, then nothing gets triggered to send out a notification. Another thing, VE7CC, download that cluster. You could set up a, I have set up a log file to read the tail of the log file, and if it sees that it's a FFMA grid, it'll send me an email alert from the spot, from the cluster. Another thing you can do too is put your wanted call sign. So when I know Dave or Wyatt or Peter are out in some grids I need, I'll go ahead and enter their call into the cluster as a wanted call sign, and I'll get an email alert from VE7CC. DX Lab Suite, same thing on Spot Collector. You could set up a SQL, SQL phrase to go in and just look at your needed grids based on the log you have, and you could set it up to alert you on the screen when a needed grid is there. And then I'm not sure how the email alerts, if it'll alert on a needed grid. I know it does on DXCC, but I did do the SQL expression for wanted FFMA grids, and I ran it today, but I'm getting down to needing very few grids, so I'm not getting any alerts. So maybe some of you guys who use Spot Collector may know how well that works, but you could apply a SQL filter to filter out just your needed grids, and it'll send you an email alert, I believe. Any questions on that? All right, so lastly, for FFMA, really, if you're not on Meteor Scatter, you're missing out. Meteor Scatter is the king mode for FFMA. I'm not just talking about MSK. It could be FSK, MSK. It could be Q65. I know there's some guys doing some Meteor Scatter with Q65. Get on Meteor Scatter. Learn the proper technique. And then when a rover's out, see how they're operating. It's no different than being on 40 meters and listening to a DX station on phone. You got to figure out what their cadence is and figure out when to call. On Meteor Scatter, figure out if they're running contest mode and answer them in contest mode. Now, I miss that from time to time because I get a little too excited about working a grid I need, but try to at least for your TX4 send RRR. Let's not send RR73 on Meteor Scatter. That's a good way to lose a confirmation. Send RRR. I wish RR73 was not part of MSK. I wish that option would disappear, but simply, if you're on Meteor Scatter, please send RRR. Now, why do I say you need to be on Meteor Scatter? So this little funky image I have here is kind of a representation of all 488 grid square center to grid square center distances. It's just color coded. I thought it looked pretty neat and I put it up here. So I did a calculation of everybody on the FFMA leaderboard to all FFMA grids centers, and it comes up with the minimum grids that you can complete on meteor scatters around 140 FFMA grids. That's if you're on the outskirts of the country. As a matter of fact, that's Canadian station. All they can reach is around 140 FFMA grids. If you're in the center of the country, you could work 426 FFMA grids on meteor scatter. Of all 136 stations, the average comes out to 318 FFMA grids could be worked on meteor scatter, with the median being 327. So meteor scatter is where we need to be. It can be done any time of the year under any condition. And if you're just waiting for a station to go to a grid you need that's in meteor scatter range or waiting for ease, you may miss out. So meteor scatter is where you need to be. Let me see if I got, I clicked the wrong button, guys. Let me show y'all something real quick if I can find it. I got things holding up, freezing up on me. Well, that's not gonna work.
I got a brief comment on FT8. I'm sorry, on meteor scatter as you're doing that.
Okay.
Okay, meteor scatter is not FT8. You're not going to make a QSO in what, 1 minute or 2 minutes, something like that. Meteor scatter is going to take a while. Okay, so you got to have patience, yourself and the other guy who's trying to work you. And a lot of guys, you know, after 5 minutes, they'll just give up, and it doesn't work that way. And the other thing about meteor scatter that is very important is distance. ES for a 4, 5, maybe 600 QSO is going to be very difficult, if not impossible. On meteor scatter, relatively easy.
And also, I mean, try backscatter, guys. I mean, try different things with meteor scatter. Kind of the same with ion scatter. I'll tell you what, I worked N0LL, I think in EM 07, maybe 05. And I had my antennas down. All I had was a loop up at about 15 feet and 100 watts, and I worked them on meteor scatter. He was within range, and it can be done. More people need to be getting on meteor scatter and trying to make those contacts. I mean, you're talking on average 65% of all the FFMA grids are reachable by the average leaderboard participant. You know, it's going to be different, of course, out near the edges of the country. There's no change in that. I mean, you can move to the center of the country. The rare grids are still going to be the same rare grids. But you got to utilize meteor scatter to make these contacts. So I mapped, here's the Excel spreadsheet I was bringing up. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to wind it up here in a few minutes, so maybe you can start.
This is the last thing I'm gonna talk about.
All right, I gotta put the kids to bed soon.
Oh, so I'll produce all this information maybe in the follow-up post to show where everybody's at. But you know, you got N0LWF. He can reach 87% of the FFMA grids. You know, use meteor scatter and get it done. You know, if you're not, you're missing out. If I wasn't doing meteor scatter, I would have probably half the grids confirmed that I have. Any questions?
I had one comment, Francis, and also kind of a question for Paul. When you talk about backscatter, Paul, do you have a copy of N5SIX's backscatter aiming calculator?
Somewhere I do. I remember getting that about 3 years ago.
Okay,
I
well,
gotta find it.
well, and I didn't know whether it was something that could be communicated up on your website on the front
I think
range.
I think we probably could do another grid, or at least another Zoom meeting on maybe some of these extra tools, because I think there's enough detail there that we could probably go through it. But
And I had one other thing about remember Ping Jockey client, Ping Jockey, the web page. There, the main Ping Jockey web page, Ping Jockey Central, is specifically for meteor scatter, but he also has a page that's for everything else terrestrial. And if you have Dan, N5TM has a client that I like it a lot because it's way less busy than Slack. And if you have a Ping Jockey client, like I say, the main page is meteor scatter, but he also has up at the top, there's a link to a thing called the JT65 terrestrial page. Now that's kind of misnamed, but that's where anything terrestrial other than meteor scatter is good for that page. So Ping Jockey Central is a good place. Like I say, it's way more compact, a whole lot more information in a smaller space than Slack. And that's it.
Yep. So, guys, meteor scatter. That's where the majority of your FFMA grids are probably going to be worked, especially the rare ones. Some of us will have to wait on some sporadic E to get across the country, but you can knock out a lot focusing on meteor scatter. And again, figure out what the rover wants to get from you. If they want you to send RR73, that's fine. But since meteor scatter there's no reason for you to have a reasonable expectation that you're going to complete on the next round, you should just send RRR as your TX4. That's all I got.
all right, that's awesome. Thank you very much, Francis. That's about the most information I've ever known on FFMA, and I'm going to reread this again a couple more times because there's a lot of good stuff in there, and it helps a lot of folks there. So let you guys carry on. I'm going to close the Zoom, and I'll wait for, I think you said you're going to put some stuff onto the Front Range 6 Meter Group page. So looking forward to that, Francis. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks,
A
guys.
quick question before you go.
Yep.
There seems to be considerable discussion about paper cards, whether for FFMA they have to go straight to ARRL, or if paper cards can be checked by the field card checkers.
Let me comment about that.
Go right ahead.
FFMA is a subset of VUCC. So whatever rules about VUCC, that's what you need to follow for FFMA. So whatever it takes to get your QSOs, your QSLs into VUCC, that's what it takes to do them for FFMA.
Okay, well,
There
that's
are-
And,
early,
hey,
early,
yeah,
'cause I
early-
hate to put
early
things in the
on-
mail
early-
and have them disappear, so.
Yeah, early on, there was discussion about handling cards and counting them and whatever else. But the current way, get them into Logbook of the World, into VUCC, really, I should say VUCC, because of course you can do physical cards in VUCC that aren't Logbook of the World. But
so
it's just a subset of VUCC, and so you do all of that, and you'll have it. You don't have to
And
have your. Go ahead.
is that like with DX CC where you have to have the ARL transport your credits from one award to the other?
No.
So they'll automatically
wait, hold
show
on,
up.
No.
hold on just a minute. You have legacy stuff for VUCC where you had cards looked at and there was a list and you sent the list in and all of that. That's the old kind of old stuff. Okay, there's also the Logbook of the World QSLs. So you have the VUCC credits that are on cards. You have Logbook of the World, and you link them together. And Logbook of the World shows you the combined everything from cards and everything from Logbook of the World. You don't have to pay for credits for FFMA. They just have to be in there.